Marilyn is asking if this is on sale yet. I believe this book comes out in January, actually. I read it last night and today, and it is a fascinating book called simply Harry S. Truman, written by his daughter, Margaret Truman, and it's a warm, intimate account and great reading. Would you welcome, please, Margaret Truman. Were we right? I don't know whether you heard this, Margaret. Is it actually out now?
Well, backstage at all.
Is this out yet, or somebody said
it's coming out soon.
In January? It's really a fascinating book.
Thank you.
It really is. I was amazed. You give credits to people helping you compile this information, but you relied a lot, obviously, on your own memory of when you were in the White House, and it's amazing.
I checked it out, though.
Did you check everything?
To
make
I'm
sure?
not getting any younger. I better check out my memory.
You know, I'm a great admirer of your father, as millions and millions of people all over the world, but much more after I read the book, and I'll tell you why. Because in one of the chapters there, you said that he hated Brussels sprouts. And I said, that's my kind of president right there. Because if there's one thing
reason to like
Has anybody asked you that question before or mentioned that? You mentioned that you had a White House cook who was over from another administration, right?
That's right. She was the housekeeper.
Was the housekeeper. Mrs. Nesbitt, am I right?
That's right, yes.
And Mrs. Nesbitt served Brussels sprouts. And your father does not care for Brussels sprouts.
That's the understatement of the year.
I don't either. I have
I'd
a
been
running
left
joke.
in charge, you see. This is what annoyed
You were in charge?
me. Yes, my mother was away, so I was supposed to approve the menus. And I saw Brussels sprouts on the menu the first night. And I said, please take it off. They were not taken off. The next night, or 2 nights later, 2 or 3 nights later, there they were again. Mm-hmm. So I called my mother, and I said, you better get back here, because if you don't, I'm going to fire her. My mother said, I'm coming, don't fire her. She did later.
Yeah, I don't like Brussels sprouts either. I don't trust people who like Brussels sprouts. I don't know why. There's something that's very deep-seated there
Johnny,
about that.
The British like them.
Well, I don't trust the British either. Don't they like Brussels sprouts? No, I'll hear have mail today.
Oh, yes.
Have your parents read the book yet?
Yes, mother especially.
Yeah.
She's read it 3 times, I think.
How about your father?
He saw the original manuscript. I don't know whether he's been through the whole thing again or not.
Mm-hmm.
He checked out some facts for me.
I know a lot of the questions that people probably want to ask you are difficult for you to answer because they're very personal and have to do, I suppose, a lot with your father's decision-making. But you point out once he made the decision, didn't he have a little card on his desk once that says, the buck stops here? Mm-hmm. And how did he go about making decisions, basically, as long as you remember?
He had many wonderful men who helped him, gave him their best advice, like Dean Acheson and General Marshall. He would listen to everybody before a big decision, and then he would sit down with all of their opinions and arrive at a conclusion and make the decision. But he said the decision rested with him, and he was to blame for whatever happened. So the buck stops here.
Yes. Your father also, in the last chapter of the book, you say, your father is very pleased that many historians already have rated him as one of the top 7 or 8 presidents in history, but he doesn't, although that pleases him, he is not yet ready to put himself in a certain niche in history yet. He says, I think it usually takes 25 or 30 years, he said, and he said, if you do your job, history will treat you right.
If you do your duty.
If you do your duty.
History will do you justice.
History will do you justice. Your father's what, 88 now?
No, 89.
89 years old.
I have to remember how old I am.
Huh?
He's 40 years older than I am, so he's 88. He'll be 89 next May. 89. He'll be 90, won't he? I'm 48. How old is he?
Let's see, he would be...
He's 88.
He would be
He'll be
88.
89.
He'll be 89.
I can't remember when he was born. That's all right. Well, I wrote the book.
Yeah. And he still lives in Independence.
Mm-hmm. The house that my great-grandfather built.
You mentioned when he... That's right. That's right. You mentioned when he went back there was a fence around the house, an iron fence, I believe. And somebody suggested that they take it down. And your father didn't want to take it down because you had a problem with souvenir hunters and...
Well, much as I love the American public, they are souvenir happy. They will take things without being malicious about it, but they'll take little souvenirs of your desk, or they'll sort of snip off parts of the suit you have on, things like that, if you give them a chance.
Right.
It's not malicious. They just want souvenirs.
Right.
And Mr. Hoover, former President Hoover, told him many years ago that he thought that he ought to put a fence up around his house because he said they managed to go off with about 50% of my house in Palo Alto before I caught on to this.
Is the fence still up in
Yes,
Independence?
it will be forever.
Your father was, what, 60 years old when he first became vice president? I believe,
President,
yeah.
yes. Mhm.
And he didn't, you say in the book that he actually didn't wish to be vice president. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, first of all, he was committed to Jimmy Burns. He was going to nominate him.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't really think of himself as vice presidential material. When people kept pressuring him, finally Bob Hannigan had to call President Roosevelt. And President Roosevelt was very succinct and brief about it. He said, well, tell him if he wants to break up the Democratic Party during a war, all right, and slammed up the phone. And my father said, why couldn't he have told me? Well, that wasn't Mr. Roosevelt's way. He had a different way of doing things from my father. But after this all happened at the convention, my father was even more sure that he wished that he were not vice president because Mr. Roosevelt was quite ill. Most people didn't know it at the time. I don't know if there was any reason why they should, but it was quite obvious to everyone who saw him.
Your father said something about he didn't want to come in the back door,
He didn't
something
want to come
like
into the
that.
presidency through the back door, no.
I suppose the greatest upset in political history was when your father ran against Thomas E. Dewey, and I think Elmer Roper at that time quit taking polls as early as September, if I remember you said in the book.
Something like that.
You just said the outcome was so obvious that Thomas E. Dewey was going to be the next president. And yet your father, from the very inception, said he was going to win that election. Did you and your mother and the close friends believe that when he said it? When all the pollsters, I think in Newsweek magazine you mentioned that all 50, ran a poll from 50 political scientists, and they all said that there was not a possible chance whatsoever.
Yes, we believed it. We were with him. We saw the crowds. I mean, you don't come out in the middle of an Iowa cornfield at 6:30 in the morning just out of curiosity. Come out to listen to hear what the man has to say. We carried Iowa, too.
It was absolutely remarkable. I don't think anyone will ever forget your father doing his impression of H.V. Kaltenborn, who earlier that day was reading in his Kaltenborn style that your father had lost the election, and your father mimicked him, I think, at a dinner or something.
Yes, it was during the inaugural festivities, one of the big dinners that we had to go to. But the photographers missed the best picture. They should have had a picture of my mother's face when he started this, because she didn't know it was going to happen.
What do you mean? Oh, when she started doing the impression?
Yes, it was like this. What is he going to do next? And
said your
I
father-
broke up, naturally.
You said your father always referred in campaigns when he would go out as he would introduce your mother as the boss, and then introduce you as the one who bosses the boss. And neither one of you liked that very much. But he didn't want to change it, right?
He wouldn't change.
He just wouldn't.
No, I think we approached him in the wrong way. You see, there's a good streak of stubbornness in all three of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, when we all three meet up like this, nothing gives. But I'm not the boss's boss. I never was. She was the real boss.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the book, that in all of the trips when he went to Potsdam and all of these tremendous issues and decisions that he had to make, he still kept in contact with you and his mother up until the time she died, almost on a daily or every other day basis. That's remarkable. How did he find the time to do that with that
I really
terrible
don't
burden
know,
of
but he
office?
used to write letter after letter, and of course I'm a terrible letter writer. I did not inherit this from him, and I used to catch it all the time. Where is my letter I should be having?
Right.
And I'd finally sit down and write a long one. But you're speaking of Potsdam. I remember one rather interesting thing that happened, Johnny, that there was a scrambler phone. During the war, they had the scrambler phones. You'd press the button, and nobody could hear anything in between, but the person on each end could hear each
Right.
other. He called from Potsdam, and we had one in the house, and I picked it up, and there he was, like in the next room. Well, we're used to it now. But in those days, when you called overseas, you could hardly hear.
That must have been a rather incredible feeling.
Oh, it was. It was great fun.
And he would fill you in. It was just on family matters you would discuss?
Yeah, he
in the
just
midst
called
of
up to see
all
if
this?
everybody was all right.
Did your father ever worry about censure from the press or were you aware of it that columns that didn't agree with him would hurt him at all?
Didn't hurt him.
Yeah.
He disagreed with them frequently and publicly.
But it's funny. Yes, he had some go-arounds, didn't he, with the press?
Every now and then.
What kind of schedule does your father have now? I know they have, of course, the Truman Library in Independence. Does he spend some time there?
Not much anymore. He stays at home a good deal of the time. He goes out for rides and short walks. He's in good health. He's frail. His mind is clear. After all, when you're 89, which
That's
isn't too
remarkable.
much in his family, but still.
That's remarkable. He doesn't talk to reporters, though, anymore, does he? I mean,
No,
or give
he
interviews and
says
such.
he says his mind isn't as clear as it was at 60. Well, I think his mind right now is clearer than mine, but it's his opinions.
He also reporters ask him to make comments on other presidents, and he refuses to do that, does he not?
He's always refused to do that.
Does
Once
he?
a man is elected president, he's the president of the United States, and as such, he deserves your allegiance, no matter whether you agree with him politically or not.
Yes, I remember one anecdote you had in the book about where he had disagreed, I guess, with Jack Kennedy one time about something, and the word kind of got back to him. He says, well, if the president of the United States doesn't want me to talk about that, I'll shut up. And he did.
That's right.
He's a remarkable man. You see him often?
Often as I can, yes.
How many grandchildren? He doesn't like Grandpa, I understand, to be called that.
Oh, he loves to be
Well,
called
that's the one
Grandpa.
thing he did like. He doesn't like nicknames generally, but
No,
that
he
he
hates
doesn't
nicknames,
bother.
but he likes to be called Grandpa. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about last Christmas. I took all 4 of my boys out there, and the 2 older ones have long hair. And so he saw the oldest one very briefly. He hadn't seen him for at least, for a long time. And he saw him very briefly at the airport, and then we got in the house, and so Clifton sort of sauntered through. He's very tall, and for his age, he sort of sauntered through. He's kind of a casual type. And my father told me, he said, come here a minute. So I went in the library. He said, who is that tall young man with the long hair out there? I said, that happens to be your oldest grandson. I said, Clifton, come here and get reacquainted with your grandfather. He came in and sat down and talked to him for about 15 or 20 minutes. Then he played the piano for him, so then he was in.
Your dad was never particularly fond of the long hair in the boys, though, right?
No, but he's gotten used
holding
to
to
it.
that. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Intimate by Revlon. Diamond Facet Spray Mist. How'd you know? An intimate teddy bear. He looks just like you. Perfumed bath powder. A basket of intimate. Did he give me intimate because I like it? Or because he likes it?
Ho, ho, ho. Give her something intimate. It's really a man's fragrance. Intimate by Revlon. Beautiful.
Mothers do a lot of nice things their families never notice.
Dad, do you like being a dad?
Of course I do.
It's not easy, right?
Well, nothing worthwhile is easy, really.
Funny, that's what Mom says, too.
Mothers do a lot of nice things their families never notice. But someone nearly always notices a bag of Kraft toffee.
Thanks, Mom.
Know what I want for Christmas? A teddy bear, a golden one, and a shimmery, glimmery nutshell, and a golden heart on a long chain. Max Factors filled each one with a special secret. Hypnotique cream perfume or translucent pressed powder. I've heard that Max Factors compacts and lockets start at just $5. Oh, please. Can I have just one?
Elegant compacts and lockets, created by Max Factor.
Margaret, I thank you very much for being with us tonight. I think the book is going to be a tremendous success. It's a fine book.
Thank you.
A lot of love in this book. It's called Harry S. Truman by Margaret Truman. I thank you for being with us. Marilyn, thank you. Buddy, thanks. David Steinberg will be here tomorrow with James Caan, Alexis Smith, and Leslie Uggams. Good night.
This program was pre-recorded.